Alright, hey guys, so this is going to be a little tutorial on how to make a PostgreSQL server on a Raspberry Pi computer. We're going to be creating the computer itself, putting an operating system on it, and then we're going to be using the command line to create the database, fill the database, and then query the database. So the first thing you're going to want to do is go online and find the Raspberry Pi imager. So the imager is going to give you the operating system, and the imager is going to help you download the operating system to an SD card. The SD card is what we're going to be putting into the Raspberry Pi in order to install the operating system. So the next part is we are going to be putting together the Raspberry Pi components. At first, we're going to put on this thermal adhesive, and it's going to be placed on these pieces that need to touch the heatsink. And the thermal adhesive is there to help those pieces cool. Next, we're going to actually take the SD card that we had just put the image on, the OS, and we're going to plug it in the Raspberry Pi. Following that, we're going to put the heatsink onto the pins of the Raspberry Pi and then plug in our auxiliary board that's going to have our HDMI outputs and a couple more USB ports. Once we put that in our case, we're going to screw it down and position it so that it stays put. Next thing we're going to do is put our mSATA SSD together. We need to put it on this adapter using a little screw, and then we're going to take the adapter and the SSD and place it on the bottom of our Raspberry Pi computer board with more of those screws. Once we put all the screws in place, we're going to put together the rest of the case. We're going to get the cover on and screw down the cover with some smaller screws. Now this case I just got off Amazon, as well as all the components. Usually they come in a package, super easy to get, not very expensive. The Raspberry Pi itself as well you can get off Amazon for fairly cheap. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to connect our Raspberry Pi to power, connect a mouse to it, as well as a display screen. Once you power it on, you're going to start to see some initialization screens. You're going to wait for the Raspberry Pi logo, and then there's going to be a setup page that pops up. You're going to go through, set your settings, you're going to have to set a username and password, and then your operating system is set up. Alright, once we got the operating system set up, we're going to go up in the top left corner, click on the browser, and we're going to search for Postgres. Now I like Postgres because it is an open source database software, but it's still super powerful and widely used in the industry today. So once we get to Postgres, we are using a Linux distribution. So we're going to click on Linux, Linux, not Linux. And then we are using a form of Debian. So most places like this, they will give you the script right there to put in the command line. And so all you have to do is copy the script, open a new terminal, paste the script in the command line, and run it by pressing enter. This will take a second. I sped it up to make this a little bit faster of a video. It'll go through a bunch of packages, installing them, and getting everything in place set up for you. Once you see your username at the bottom, you know it's finished. All right, guys, so the next thing we're going to do is access our Postgres server. You need to open a new terminal. We're going to use sudo, which signifies super user, gives us all the access and permissions we need. Then we're going to type in PSQL. That will get us into the server. From there, we're going to act like it's a SQL and type created database name, semicolon. And then we are going to use the antiques data set. And in order to get to the database we need to do /connect database name, semicolon. Now, I modified this a little bit in order to make it fit Postgres. We used varchar instead of char. We used serial instead of identity. This is making it compatible with Postgres, as Postgres is kind of different from SQL. So we're going to take this, we're going to copy and paste it straight into the command line. You'll see it says created table all the way down. And then we are going to fill those tables. This part did not need any modification in order to be compatible with Postgres. Pasted that in, hit enter, and you can see it inserted all those values. All right, so the next thing is I'm going to open a new terminal and we're going to check out our database that we just made. Once again, I'm going to use sudo su postgres, which gets us into the server, and then I'm going to use PSQL database name, and that's going to get us into our database. From there, on the right, you can see I'm typing in just a normal select query, see what's in the employee table. As you can see, there's 30 rows there. On the left, I'm going to write a query that's a little more intensive than just select star. And you'll be able to see how exactly SQL is going to interact with the command line and pull up the results. So when you press enter in the command line, it won't run the SQL quite yet. In order for the SQL to run, it has to end with a semicolon and then press enter, and that's when you will see your results pop up. As you can see there, results popped up. We can see all of the results from the query that we just made, 24 rows. All right, so why is this important? I was showing you this because Postgres is a widely used database server in the industry today. We use it in DATA-4330 in the pipeline engineering class, and I think it's super important to know how to create database servers and be able to create the databases on those servers. And so being able to do this in a Linux environment and being able to do this with Postgres gives a real competitive advantage to those entering that industry, maybe those trying to get into information systems engineering. So I see this as like a way of expanding our knowledge in SQL over to Postgres, over to Linux, and covering our bases on that front. I would have liked to go further and show you guys how to remotely connect to this database and use Python to input and query from the database, but sadly I ran out of time. Maybe next time.